Yeah, I would say so. I would say my take on this would be that we need to have a law. You can probably assume I agree with the NAP. I don't believe in aggression, and that's because I think we need to have an objective law, a consistent law across the board. And if we don't do that, we're going to have societal impacts. Mainly, that's what I think like the political system is. I think it's conflict inducing, not conflict reducing. It induces conflict into the world. I mean,
Hmm.
into the nation. And I think that's a problem, and that's why I think we'd be much better as a society where we vote on everything rather than just
Did
one
you know
thing.
that there exist laws, or I'm sorry, taxes that actually cause a net positive?
Sure,
Oh, that's
like
where you
what?
pull out the rape now. Ah!
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry. Continue. Yeah, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now
Go ahead.
this, to be fair, this part kind of annoyed me because I heard him say that and I was like, oh, not the utilitarian bullshit calculus. Because when I heard him say
Yes.
that, I immediately knew in my head, there's no way that they have what is it, collected all the variables, and like, because if they could find all the variables, then they could prove it to us, but they can't prove it to us. So I knew immediately it was bullshit when he said that, because I was like, there's no way in economics they found all the variables to taking away the taxes instead of seeing where those taxes would have gone into research and development, and then giving it to welfare and seeing those people with the welfare rise up and like contribute to society. I knew that was bullshit.
Yeah.
So
That's again. It's impossible. Like it's the economic calculation problem. It's impossible for
yeah.
one person to possibly know what every individual person wants and needs at every individual moment. Like even if you were to try to do a vote for every individual person, like that only tells you what they may have thought at that moment at that time. But setting the impossibility of that aside, even if we had lived in a world of perfect information, and or we had a situation in which where it was clearly one side over the other, such as the see, the reason why I like the fuck, what do I call it? The utopia rape analogy. I'm gonna just call it the utopian rape analogy.
Yeah.
Um, the reason why I like the utopian rape analogy is you don't need to sit there and calculate whether or not there's more utility in raping the person or not raping the person. It's very clear and obvious what side has more utility than the other. So, and the one side that has more utility is the one of keeping the utopia. So under their ethic, they'd have no choice but to say, keep the utopia. So even under a situation where you have full knowledge of that there's going to be more utility in doing that, you could still give them a situation in which they would still disagree with choosing the utility option, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah.
It does. All right.
Well, one example would be food stamps in the
Food
United
stamps.
States.
Okay. And how's this positive?
Sure. So there's a metric that you can actually look up. It's called MVPF, or the marginal value of public funds. So what it does is that it sees over the average lifetime of an individual how much that they
I'm
actually
just gonna
pay
skip this because I think we already talked about it, so
Yeah, yeah,
into
yeah. So
taxes
what? Like I said, I
stamps
would have just like I
on
said,
its
I would have
face.
just
That's an
said,
external
I don't
example.
care what statistic you showed me that tells me what utility is better than the other. Simply because you have more utility does not give you the right to initiate an aggression, and then you would
yeah.
give the rape analogy, and that's pretty much
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Mhm.
For the foods, they know money and actually not do it because that, like, then in a way it will bet then food stamps,
Um,
like what?
like private charity. I'm a proponent of private charity.
So you're in favor of subsidizing private charity?
No, I'm in favor of people
You didn't even
voluntarily
say that. I don't know why the
So
fuck you
people
engaging
even
in
said
have to
that.
private
volunteer.
charity.
So what if
I don't know why he assumed that.
Yeah, that's how government brained these people are. That you know what I'm saying? Like they
Yeah.
think that everything has to be done through the government. That's how government brained these people are.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's like talking to somebody who's like who doesn't even live in the same, world, the same country.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Mhm.
If they don't voluntarily,
So what if they don't?
then the charity goes away.
Yeah.
Okay, are you going to be hungry tomorrow?
Yeah, I am. And then I'm gonna eat myself a
Okay,
smoothie.
what if the charity just fucks off?
He didn't let
Okay,
me
okay,
finish. I was
okay,
gonna
okay,
tell him I was gonna eat a
okay,
smoothie
okay.
bowl.
This is what I would have said. This is what I would have done. All right, in this situation, because he's kind of got you here. All right, and what you should have said is, yes, I think helping people is good. The issue isn't that we want to help people. The issue is that we don't think it's right to force other people in, in order to help people. If you like fundamentally, what we believe is, um, we believe that if you want help from another person, that person must voluntarily give it to you. The only other option is to force people to do things in which they don't want to do. And that's what we're against. We don't think it's okay to violate consent. So I would have
That's
said is,
true.
hey, listen, I'm not against helping people. I'm not against giving poor people food. What I'm against is forcing people to pay into a system that they don't agree with. If I don't want to give some poor person $5, I shouldn't have to. Um, you know,
That's why I
that's
was
the fun.
interested in. That's why I kind of took a step back because I wanted to see where he was gonna take this. I was genuinely curious what he thought he was gonna prove with this example. So that's why I was very passive here. Because I was like, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm genuinely interested to see where he's gonna go with this, to see if he has a point. And I knew
Yeah.
very well, like, I don't think he has a point, and I just wanted to see that prove it taken out. But
Yeah, no
yeah.
problem, no problem. But you're right. In the end of the day, we're both right, so it doesn't matter. All
Yeah.
right,
Off.
continue,
Then I
continue.
guess I'll starve. No, I'll get a job, bro, and then I'll go work, and then I'll make myself another fucking smoothie and put some cereal on top.
Well, hopefully you don't have. Hopefully, hopefully you yourself don't have kids.
Yeah, let's hope. Yeah, no. So, see, because the thing is, he hasn't proven
I'm not sure
anything
what the
here.
point of that.
Well,
I'm not
that's
sure what
dude.
the point of even saying that was.
This is my entire point because I knew he was going to lead me down this path, and I knew he would have nothing at the end of it. And if you're looking at this video right now he has nothing. He walked me down the path, and his strongest argument against this point was then, I guess I hope you don't have kids. And it's like, that's not an argument. That doesn't do anything. So
What I would have done is I would have honed down on that. I would have been like, listen, what I'm gonna, if I want, even if I had kids, even if I were to have kids, I would still not think it's right for another person to violate another person's consent in order to feed them. If somebody wants to feed my kid, it ought to be voluntarily. And you have to hone in on again, the like, because a lot of liberals and a lot of libertarians, they sometimes do this, where they'll be like, fuck the poor or some shit like that, or we're fucking welfare. I don't give a fuck about what. Like, the issue isn't that we're helping poor people.
you're kind of
The
calling me
issue
out, bro.
is the what you say?
I was joking. I said you're kind of calling me out, bro.
It's the issue is that we are forcing people to pay it to help people. We shouldn't force people to help people. That's the fundamental issue. So that's what you should have attacked. You should have been like, okay, well, yes, I would want somebody to help, but again, I don't think it's right to force people to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's true.
But I do say fuck
I
poor
didn't
people
really
once
want
in
to
a
get
while.
into.
I do the same thing, so it's okay.
My big thing is like, dude, I'm poor, and it's like every single thing. I literally worked my way through college, and I literally got my degree all on my own. I've basically been on my own like most of my life. Every single penny I've earned has been earned through minimum wage. I've worked, in retail for like 10 years. Every single thing I've earned on my own. And it's like, yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable as fuck. But it's like, it doesn't matter because nobody else owes me anything. Maybe I'll be poor for the rest of my life, but it's like nobody else. I cannot steal and I cannot use violence on other people in order to make my life better. I can't do that. I have to earn things on my own.
Yeah,
So,
and that's the argument we should. And I sympathize with that, and I understand like where libertarians come from when they say shit like that. And
Well, the
generally they're
problem is
joking around.
rational people understand that argument. Irrational people
Yeah.
won't agree with that argument. So I
Because
agree with you
liberals,
there.
when you're debating with liberals, when you're debating, like you said, when you're debating with liberal people, they're automatically just going to be like, that's offensive. How could you? You're just going to automatically turn them off too. They're just going to look at you like an evil person, and they're going to try their best to make you. What they'll do is they'll be like, oh, you just don't care about poor people. You just want poor people to die. You just want this, da, 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 da. You know, obviously that's not true. You know,
Yeah.
so they'll try to make an emotional argument. Fuck, why is this not going up? There we go.
I don't know
There we go. All right, continue.
this, but have you ever heard of mutual aid societies?
Mutual aid societies. Why don't you tell me about it? I'm not familiar with that term.
I think it's one of America's like best kept secrets. It's I was doing research on mutual aid societies because I was looking into like privatized like welfare and things of that nature, and I came across something called mutual aid societies, which were these really big groups in the 19. By the way, just quickly, I'm pretty sure I learned about mutual aid societies through Mentis Wave, but I forget where I learned it from. It could have been through Mentis Wave.
Yeah, that he has a video on that.
Okay, yeah,
He has a good video on that. Yeah.
So it's funny because he put that in my mind unconsciously, and then like years later, months later, I read up on it on my own. But yeah, shout out to Mentis Wave for that. 19th and 20th century, not mostly, but specifically for all groups of different types of people, like immigrants across the world that came to America. You had like Spanish mutual aid societies, you had like Italians, there was all kinds. I think there's African American ones too. And this was before regulation of like the medical insurance and like healthcare and all that stuff. And so these societies would essentially form, I guess, what you would call like the first insurance groups, but they were like localized and community focused, and they would pay extremely cheap fees to be in these giant clubs. And what they would do is they would buy a doctor, and they would have insurance and stuff, and they would have a doctor on retainer, and they would pay incredibly small amounts of fees in order to be able to
Bro, he's totally laughing at
wealth.
me for some
So,
reason as I explain this.
What would happen is people would buy
Because
they
these
would pay
people
these small
cannot
fees.
imagine
There would be small
a world
subscriptions.
where the government doesn't control healthcare. Like to them, like it's kind of crazy. Like government not controlling healthcare is like almost, like what's the word when you can't comprehend? It's almost incomprehensible to these people.
Incomprehensible.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like it's a private company giving people healthcare. What? That's why like people are very snobby like that. You know what I mean?
Dude, you don't know
Yeah,
how
it's like-
completely fucking pissed I am at the fact that we don't have mutual aid societies, because it was insanely cheap 100 years ago. Could you imagine how fucking cheap it would be now with the development of technology and wealth? It would be so fucking cheap to have healthcare and insurance. So fucking cheap. But we had to have regulation come in. And what's healthcare nowadays? Like $200 by yourself a month? Like for a family, it's like $500, $600 or whatever. It's ridiculous. But back then it was $10 of today's money. And that's not including 100 years of wealth generation. Fucking crazy, dude.
Yep. Yeah, and all the main issues with our fucking healthcare system is because the state is in our healthcare system. It regulates the shit out of these health insurance agencies. They regulate occupational licensing laws that basically make it extremely hard to become a doctor. We also make it illegal for doctors outside the country to come to the United States. You know, you can only get insurance from an insurance company that's in your state. Like there's just all these ridiculous, dumb regulations that make things so goddamn expensive. But the point is to do that. The point is to make healthcare more expensive with these regulations, so that these individuals, because politicians understand that the individuals don't blame politicians for these high prices. They blame the private companies who are giving the high prices. So what their plan is to put more and more regulations, make the costs of everything go higher and higher, so that they can convince people, look how high, expensive everything is in the market. If only the government took over the whole thing, everything will then become cheaper. And then they use that as a justification to get more control. So it's like a never-ending circus because individuals don't really understand the reasons why prices are going so goddamn high.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Prescriptions.
Yep.
And then whenever they needed to see the doctor, they could see the doctor. And essentially, what you have right here is like voluntary communism. Like, unironically, voluntary communism. And
What
it
do you
worked.
think? Never mind. I'm not even gonna. You're using the word communism wrong, but I'm not gonna get stuck on that.
True, because communism is violent and forceful. You're right
No,
about that.
it's not what
You're right about
communism
that.
is. Communism is the moneyless, stateless, classless society. So if there's money involved, then
He does
it's
got
already
you there.
not communism.
He got
But I
me.
do understand where I
He
do
got me on the
understand what you meant
definition.
when you said that. Yeah, but he understood where, like I said earlier, he understood what you meant when you said that, but he's only doing that because he's, like I said, you're trying to have a discussion with him, and he's trying to debate you. He's trying to make you look like an idiot. That's really what it is. So
Yeah.
that's all I can
I
say.
should have. What I should
You
have
knew what you
said
meant.
is, I should have said commune so that I wouldn't get that backlash. But
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
not. I'm not used to saying the word commune. I'm used to saying the word like communism, socialism, capitalism. So communism is the
Yeah.
first thing that slipped out of my mouth. But I should have said like commune, like
Yeah.
small. And I've seen Scott do plenty of videos on this, but like very small scale communes where they had like communist societies in those very small villages, they actually worked out. And it's because on a small scale, it's actually okay because number one, everything's voluntary, and number two, people have direct access to each other so they can hold each other accountable. It doesn't work on big scales for multiple reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. The thing about communes is, so long as there's a private owner of the land, and the individuals who are in that land are voluntarily living under the system that that individual is putting under that land, well, then there's literally nothing wrong with it. There's no rights violation happening. There's nothing wrong going on. So, under a libertarian society, you could be a communist, but under a communistic society, you're not
Can't be
allowed
a
to be a
libertarian.
libertarian.
Yep.
No.
it's beside the point. So tell me about these mutual aid societies. So what you're saying is that you would pay a small amount, right? And in order to be in this society, you would pay into this kind of like pool that everybody would be able to pull off of. And then what they would do is they would get like doctors and the things that people needed. So that way, like everybody could afford it.
Yeah, everything you can imagine. They had like every single type of insurance. They had like life insurance, they had medical insurance, they had, if your husband died, they would take care of you. Like everything you can imagine they had. You should totally look this up in your free time. And the fees were extremely cheap. I think it was like, I don't have it on me, but I think it's the equivalent to like $10 to $20 a day. Sorry, $10 to $20 a month.
Okay,
in today's
what if somebody
standards.
decided to not pay it? Can I ask you that?
Then you wouldn't be in the society.
They don't get the service.
I don't.
Why is that?
I don't understand. Anybody can get $10. And by the way, back in that time, I think it was like 50 cents to $1 a month, which is like in terms of today, like $10 to $20. That is so
what I would have said,
fucking cheap, dude. You could beg that out on the street for like once a day. Like you could work once a day and be part of a society. That's like beggar's change.
yeah, you're 100% correct. I would have just been like, listen, if you are incapable of coughing together the $15 a month that it takes to get really good healthcare, a pretty damn banger deal, then yeah, I'm sorry, but you're not owed another person's labor. You're not owed another person's resources simply because you're incapable of pulling together $15 a month. That's what I would have said.
Yeah.
Funny.
How is this different from taxation?
Because it's voluntary. And it's cheaper. It's like a billion times cheaper.
Wait, is it voluntary in the United States?
Is taxation voluntary?
Yeah.
No.
Well, you could just
Here.
leave.
Oh my gosh, you can just leave, bro. You can just.
Yeah, so that's where. Okay, so at this point in the video, what you could have used my example,
Of the
which
robber
was
walking
okay.
into the home and saying, "This is mine now." Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So the
Yeah.
issue again is that the state is not the okay. So state is not voluntary. You have no choice but to pay into taxes. So this isn't the same situation because if you don't want to pay for the mutual aid society's help, you could just leave. You could just or not leave. You could just choose not to pay, and they won't give you the services in which you want. This isn't a situation where like, oh, like they're gonna kick you out of your house, right? If you don't choose to pay into the system. Only if the only way they could do that is if they owned your home. If you own your own home, no one could ever tell you to leave your house. So, but again, fundamentally, the issue is they because they don't own your home, they don't have the right to kick you out, and that also goes with the state. So that's what's the difference between, say, like a government and a private company. One is completely voluntary. One is you give me this and I'll give you this, but if you don't pay me, I won't give you nothing. The other one is you give me money and or else, and you may get what I give want. Well, you may get what you want in return. That's if the government gives you what you want in return. Those are two completely different things.
They are. They are.
So yeah. hmm
And the
So
reason.
maybe I'm not explaining it well, but
No, I understand completely. I understand completely. I love this moment so much. It's so fucking hilarious, dude. Because
yeah,
he kind of throws out this last wrap together excuse that's like very, very mid, like very mediocre excuse, and you can see it on his face. He's like, "Oh, that's a shit reason," but then you can hear it in my laugh where I'm not prepared to deal with it. So we're both coming at each other with like the weakest argument and the weakest defense possible, and we're both like,
yeah,
"Fuck."
yeah. It's kind of an awkward moment, and the thing is that
So funny,
he
dude.
kind of got you there, and the reason why I'll say he got you there is because not that I don't think you're right, but because you didn't really have a good response back to what he said. He basically, so when he compares mutual aid to the government, that was your point to be like to explain the difference between a state and a private company. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
I will say
yeah. So
this.
that was like sort of yeah.
I will say this. I did correctly rebut the statement. I just didn't present it in a consumable way. So when we get
Yeah,
into this, I
you
believe
had to do it at the moment.
I immediately list off, I think, the three fallacies that he. Don't I do that? I listed off the three fallacies that he committed, or do I do that later?
Yeah, but you should have done it like
It
at the
wasn't
moment that he
consumable.
made that
Yeah.
comment. Yeah, you
Yes.
should have done it at the moment that he made that comment because it kind of just made it seem like, oh well, yeah, it almost. I know that this isn't what actually happened, but he almost basically tricked you into basically agreeing with him, even though you didn't really agree with him, or making it look like you agreed with him, uh, or didn't have good enough answer to it. Because what he was doing was he was being like, he was trying to lead you into being like, oh, well, that's pretty much the same thing as government. You believe in a government, so therefore you agree with me. If he gets that on you, then the people who are watching are going to automatically be like, oh, well, then these stupid libertarians, they do believe in a government. They just don't they just say they don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that
And
was your point to be like, oh, actually, what makes it wrong is this.
exactly. And I
What's
think
the
I saw
difference is
you.
this.
I think I saw you address this in one of your videos where you said,
I did.
you made a good example of was the Nazi regime justified as they were chasing down the Jews on their territory or something like that.
Ah, yes. Here's
Yeah.
that analogy. I'll explain. So, so the argument that a lot of people make is that a lot of people will be like, so after I make the other analogy about the person being in the home, right? They'll be like, oh, well, they are the just owners, and they do have your consent to own your land. right? They do have your consent. And the reason why they have your consent is because you choose to live there. If you choose to stay in an area that's claimed by another person, well, then what they do to you, well, that's your own issue. You're consenting to that action. That's what he was basically saying. That's what a lot of liberals say. They use a social contract where they'd be like, hey, if you choose to stay under the governmental system and use the services that are being provided to you, and you choose to not to leave, well, then you're implicitly consenting to whatever the state does to you. So then, of course, my argument against that is just like, okay, well, then if you staying in a country means that you're consenting to whatever they do to you, does that mean that the Holocaust was consensual? And they're like, no, the Holocaust wasn't consensual. I was like, yeah, but those people could have left, right? They could have left. And if they say yes, if they say, yeah, they could have left, well, then it's just like, okay, well, then I could use that same argument. The Jews, if they didn't like it, they could have left by them saying they've implicitly chose to or consented to whatever the government did to them. So what I do with these examples is I demonstrate that these people don't actually believe what they're claiming. You know, it's not that I'm trying to make them out to be like, oh, you actually believe that the Holocaust was consensual. I know that they don't believe that. I'm using this example because I know that they don't believe that. Because I know that they don't actually support that. So when you use that, it forces them to be like, either, yeah, I do support that, which makes them look really fucked up to say that, yeah, the Holocaust was consensual. It would be really fucked up to say that. You've automatically won the debate under optics. Or they would have to say, no, it wasn't consensual. Then you'd have to express me, why wasn't it consensual? Didn't they have the ability to leave? You know, just like you said before. You know, that's my the argument that I make. So whenever a person comes up to you and be like, well, by choosing to stay in the country, you know, you're consenting to whatever is done to you. You throw that at them. You'd be like, well, was the Holocaust consensual? No?
Okay, yeah.
Well, then you don't really believe that.
So the next time somebody asks me, if you don't like it, leave, I'm going to ask them, okay, so then does that make the Holocaust justified? Because the Jews were on the Nazis' land, because the Nazis claimed the land when they got there. So does that make the Holocaust justified? So that's going to be my go-to, I hope.
Yeah, what you ask first, though, you don't want to go to that first. You want to ask this first. You want to ask, so this is what they say. What was the first question that you asked? Well, why don't they just leave? Why don't you just leave? The question is, right?
Why don't you just leave?
So the first thing that you ask is, okay, so what you're saying is that you're implying that by me staying in the country, I'm consenting to the actions in which the state is doing to me. That's what you ask them. Now, if they say yes, if they say, yeah, you are consenting because taxation is consensual. And you only use this if they're making the argument that taxation is consensual, right? So if they say that, or they say, why don't you just leave? So the argument that they're making when they say, why don't you just leave? Their argument is that what they're trying to imply is that you're choosing to stay here, so therefore you're choosing to pay taxes. It's a consensual transaction. That's what they're trying to imply. So what you ask them is, okay, so me choosing to stay here means that whatever the state does to me is okay because I am choosing to stay. If they say yes, then you ask them, okay, well, was the Holocaust consensual? If they say no, well, then they don't actually believe what they're saying. They're saying that, okay, well, then simply because you live in a land that's claimed by the government and you choose not to leave, that doesn't automatically make it okay for them to violate your consent under any circumstance.
Let me run through this real quick. Okay. So just that I have it down. So essentially what happens is, let's say I say taxation is theft and they say, or no, it doesn't even have to go there.
So how about this? I go up to you and I say, if you don't like what's going on under the taxation, why don't you just leave? What do you got to say to that?
So what I'm going to say to that is, does that mean I'm implicitly consenting to everything the state does to me just because I live here?
Well, yeah, you could just leave. If you don't like it, just go.
Okay, so does that mean that the Holocaust is justified because the Jews were on the
They
Nazis'
could have just
land?
left. No, what you could have said, what you say is, does that mean that the Holocaust was consensual? Because they could have just left or during the Holocaust or before the
Okay.
Holocaust. So because they chose to stay, does that make it consensual?
So they were
Then they
consenting
would
to
have to say,
genocide. Okay.
yeah, basically. Yeah, they're
Okay.
consenting to genocide. They're saying that what they're implying is that they're consenting to a genocide, essentially.
So does that mean that the Jews consented to genocide because they chose not to leave? Okay.
Yeah, basically. That's what you would ask them. And their obvious answer is going to be no. Obviously, they didn't consent to it. No, they didn't consent to it. So it's just like, okay, so then so then you don't actually believe that, because again, your claim is a government is claiming a land. They're forcing you to. They're saying you must pay these taxes. You must pay for these services, even if you're benefiting from it. Benefiting or not benefiting doesn't matter. They're saying you got to pay for these services. If you don't pay, we're going to do this to you. We're going to violate your consent. If you don't, um, if you believe that that is consensual simply because you chose to stay there, well, then the Jews were consenting to the Holocaust, because they could have left. They could have went somewhere else. They didn't like what Germany was doing to the Jews. They could have just went to another country. But again, they don't actually believe that. No one actually believes that, unless you're talking to like a Holocaust denier. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
No one believes that.
Yeah. They're just doing that because they're trying to they're finding out their beliefs as we go through the conversation, and they don't know that their beliefs lead there.
Yeah, they don't realize that their beliefs lead there. Okay, here's
Yeah.
another good example, right? Here's another good example, right? Let's say a guy threatens you and says, if you go to your house at this time, I'm gonna rape you. And then you'd still decide to go to your house at that time. Are you consenting to that rape?
Okay.
No,
I see.
obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like another way of saying like, oh, simply
Taxes is on
because
this day.
you
If I don't see my fucking money.
yeah, exactly. So it basically it shows you, right, if that simply because you do something that may imply that you're consenting, unless you have the explicit consent of the individual, then you must necessarily violate their consent.
It's
So
crazy to me,
again, yeah,
dude. Implicit consent, the idea of implicit consent is fucking crazy to me, especially when fucking leftists are suggesting the idea that implicit consent exists. I don't see how that could
none of
possibly
these
go
people,
wrong.
none of these people actually believe that. None of them. None of them. None of them. None of them. None of them actually believe that. And for the reasons that I stated earlier. And for like I was arguing with my friend the other day. Like the other debate that I was asking. Once the woman asked me, "Is it possible for someone to consent to being raped?" I was like,
Yeah.
"There's no such thing as consensual
Yeah.
rape."
I saw that, dude.
You know what I mean? Because these people's understanding of consent is so warped. They don't have an good understanding of consent. You know what I mean? It's just so warped. She literally asked me, "Is it possible? Can somebody morally, ethically rape somebody?" And I said, "No, there's no such thing as consensual rape." And I was like, and and the reason why they did that was she wanted to try to put me in a situation where I would support rape. But again, we're libertarians. We believe in the non-aggression principle. There is no situation in which you can give us in which we would say that rape is okay. Not one. Not one. Because no matter what, we are the owners of our body. And by definition, rape is unconsensual. So therefore, you can't rape somebody. Simple as that. You know? Yeah, that was a bit of a tangent, but you still there?
Oh yeah. Did you hear what I said?
No, I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, okay, my mic was muted. I said I'm gonna go refill my water real quick. I'm just gonna play the video and then I'll come back up and pause it.
Yep,
I'll
no
give me
problem.
one.
Continue playing the video.
All right, cool.
Just live in the sea. You
That
can
was
become a
your
mermaid.
argument for the voluntary
Bro, I'm
society.
gonna become fucking mermaid, bro.
That was your argument
And then
for
I'm
the
gonna marry
voluntary
Ariel,
society.
and we're gonna
Oh
sing
my
with
God.
crabs
Bro,
and
you are
fish.
killing me. Anarchiosis. Anarchy. Bro, you just talked about the mutual aid society, right? Great. It sounds awesome and amazing, and everybody loves it. Awesome. Okay, I asked you, what if they decided to not pay for it? You then said, okay, they would get kicked out of that society. Wait, that's
wait.
not different from just taxation.
Wait, I'm sorry. Did you say that if the society decides not to pay for it, or if somebody decides not to pay their fees? What
If
were you
somebody
saying there?
decides not to pay,
Their fees, or I'm back, by the way.
Yep, I'm listening.
I need to understand what you're saying here, bro. Are you saying if somebody doesn't pay their fees into the subscription, or are you saying if the society doesn't pay for someone who needs help?
I'm gonna give you the freaking the sword of an argument that I had forged specifically for King Sithis.
Oh no!
Hey, that's me.
Hey,
We couldn't
shout
even
out.
get to it because we were
Come
stuck
on.
on dumb definitions.
All right, yeah. Let's see what you got. Bring it on.
How do you feel about HOAs?
HOAs. They're fine, I guess.
Okay. Pause it real.
Yeah, he got me here. I'll give him that. He got me here.
No, actually, he got me. And that was the last debate. The first debate that I got with him, I actually said something that was incorrect. And I didn't realize that it was incorrect at the time because I wasn't fully read up on it. But HOAs can be a thing, all right? But there's only one way in which an HOA could possibly exist. Only through contract. So, for instance, if you're the owner of a land and you decide to transfer, on the contract, you're saying, I transfer the title of this property to you so long as you pay into this HOA fee. And if you do not pay into the HOA fee, then the transfer of the title of the property would go back to me. That would be a way in which an HOA could possibly work. So I was actually wrong on that.
Okay.
And Liquid Zulu. So Liquid Zulu actually corrected me on that. So that's actually where I was incorrect. So HOAs can exist. The issue is with HOAs is that they're not voluntary. You know what I mean? It isn't a individual who's transferring the title of one good or service from one person to another, and then on the, like I said earlier, it isn't that. So what it is, it's like it's a HOA. It claims the land, or a group of people who live in land basically claim an area, and then they'd be like, hey, everybody in here. And then they get recognition from the government, and then they force everybody within that area to pay into that. And that is what we don't support.
Okay, wait. So tell me how the HOAs, because I knew there was something. Every single thing that is fucking wrong in this country somehow has to do with the government. And HOAs suck. Yeah. And I just knew somehow they had to do with the government. So what's the take?
Yeah. So the issue is that there are times where people are being forced to be in an HOA when they don't agree to it, or they're not explicitly put into the contract before you buy it. So if those things are happening, then yeah, or the government will recognize an HOA despite the fact that some people don't want to be a part of it, and that's an issue. But if there's a transfer of title and the transfer of title or property transfer is completely consensual and you know what you're buying and it's on the contract that you're paying into it, well, then it's okay. So that was actually a fumble on my end when I debated. But I feel like he ended up looking bad at the debate, mainly because he just kept fucking interrupting me every 5 fucking seconds, dude. Literally, he would not stop interrupting me.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
And it got to the point. It got to the point, and it's kind of weird because in this debate where he's debating you, he didn't interrupt you at all. He's not interrupting you at all.
That's because I was
somehow
way
in
more
the debate
passive.
with me.
That's because I'm super passive. I was super passive in this conversation.
Maybe I'm a bit aggressive. I could be a little bit aggressive. Maybe that's probably it.
Yeah, that's my problem. See,
but
I
yeah.
match people's energies like when I'm talking to them. So if they talk little, I'll talk a lot more. But if they talk a lot, I'll talk less to match them. And
Yeah.
in First Amender's case, he's a very aggressive debater. So I just kind of took a step back and kind of engaged him more passively because I just adapt
Yeah.
to whoever I'm talking to. But in your case, you're both kind of on a little bit on the aggressive side. Both of you are. So your heads were
Yeah.
butting a lot, and that's
Yeah.
why it kind of devolved into chaos during the later half of that discussion.
And the moderator did
Yeah, the
not
moderator.
do shit. That moderator did not give a fuck. That guy was interrupting me. What moderators are supposed to do is if somebody continues to interrupt another person, you don't just sit there and be like, hey, stop. Hey, come on, dudes. Come on, man. What you do is you mute the guy and then you let the other guy speak. You know what I mean? He
Yes.
didn't do that. You know, he didn't do that. So now, after a while of him just continuously interrupting me, I just like, fuck this. And I left. I was like, I'm out of here. But I'd be willing to debate him again with you. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm still waiting for him to get back to me. We'll see what happens.
Or you could, if you want, you could set up a 1v1 with me and him again, but get somebody better to moderate so that he can't just interrupt me over and over. That's the only reason why I left the debate was because I was just like kind of annoyed with him. He kept interrupting. And I never leave debates ever, generally. But that annoyed the shit out of me.
Yeah. It was hard to make progress, that's for sure. So let's see how I do during this. I don't think it's very good, but let's see.
We'll see.
Sure. I mean, mine sucks, but
Okay. So the idea of like living in a community, and if you're going to live in the community, you need to pay the dues. And if you don't pay the dues, you are at risk of forfeiting a lien onto your house, which causes you to lose your house. Right?
right.
This is cool with you.
Yeah.
Okay. You now abide by contract law. You actually abide by social contract theory.
No.
Okay.
This is no different
Oh,
from
you shouldn't have said
taxation.
okay. You shouldn't have said okay. So this is what you should have said, all right? This is what you should have said. You should have said, well, you should have said yes, but not in the way that you're trying to say. Not in the way that you're putting it. So, for instance, what we're talking about in this situation is two individuals who are transferring the title of a property consensually from one person to another with stipulations that you agreed to before you buy the thing. That's not, again, that may be a social contract, but that's not the same social contract that you're talking about when you're talking about the social contract when it comes to the government. The social contract, what he's trying to talk about is the implied consent when just by staying within that country. But again, there was no contract in which you signed in order to enter the country that makes it explicit that you have consented to that contract. So therefore, it's not the same thing. Whereas you're explicitly saying yes, I agree to this contract and I am going to follow it. And where the other one is they're saying that you're implying that you have consented to it, but they're not saying that. But you haven't explicitly consented to it, so it's different. That's what I would have thought. I don't mean to talk too much, but do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And
Okay.
I think my big fault there was I agreed with everything he said up until 2 seconds later when he literally switched from contract law to social contract. Those things
That's
are
where I knew he was going to
completely
take it.
different. Those are completely different things.
I knew him asking that. That's where he was going to take it. Like I didn't even watch the whole debate. I didn't even get to this part of the debate yet, I'll admit. But yeah, I knew he was going to take it there. As if I pre-watched it.
Yeah.
I'm good at sniffing out these stupid, scummy debate tactics that people do. That's just kind of what it is with me. All right,
Well,
continue.
you do have debate experience.
Yeah.
Sure. So basically what you're saying is this HOA home
Because you're
owns
okay with
this-
HOAs, you're
So-
okay with taxation.
So this HOA basically has a group of homes, and are you saying they
Mhm.
own the homes, and then you come and you buy a
No.
home, and then you're like,
No, they
Okay,
don't own the home.
okay, so there's an HOA, and you
You own
decide
the
to
home.
build
You
a
have the
home
equity.
in the HOA.
No,
Am
no.
I right?
The HOA presides over a particular territory.
This is what he fucking got me on because I didn't understand what he was saying. It doesn't make any fucking sense at all that you can build a home on land that you don't own. That doesn't make any fucking sense. So like he
How
was
did
he's
how did
essentially
that
saying
person get the land then?
exactly. So he's saying they own a territory, and like I don't even understand how that works. Like so like you own the home.
This is how it works.
But they own the grass.
This is how it works. This is how it works. The HOA is under a libertarian society. How it would work is, let's say you buy a house and you live in a neighborhood, like in a cul-de-sac with a whole bunch of other people, right? And you and all the other people within that cul-de-sac agree to join to be a part of an HOA, right? And they call it a homeowners association. They say, hey, if you want to be and like they basically make it so that
Opt-in.
if you decide to sell that property, you could put in the property you so you be a part of the HOA and you follow the HOA rules. It's a consensual thing, right? And you could follow it or you could not follow it, right? So long as you're the owner of the home. But let's say the owner then decides to sell that home to somebody else, right? That owner can choose to be like, hey, if you want to buy this house, you must pay into this HOA to upkeep the neighborhood. If you do not, well, then you cannot buy the house. If that person then buys the house, they would then be agreeing to pay into the HOA. But you would need to put a clause in there as to what would happen if they decide not to pay to it. So you would put in there, like, say you decide not to pay into the HOA, what would happen is the title of the property would then transfer back to me or this person or that person. It has to be a title transfer. It has to be because contracts are based off of property, and the contracts are just transfers of titles of property, and with conditions. You know what I'm saying? Some with or without conditions, I should say. And so if you're going to make an HOA, there has to be a consensual transaction between two individuals. If not, then you're violating. In order to enforce that HOA, you must necessarily violate the consent of the individuals who own their own home. So again, if you have a whole bunch of people who come together and they agree, hey, we're going to turn this into an HOA, and if you sell your house, you have to have this in the contract. Okay, I agree. And then all those people sell those houses, and then they go to individuals. All those people would have to continue paying into the HOA because they signed the contract before purchasing the home. They understood what they were getting into before they bought the home. Doing it in any other way would be a violation of consent.
Right.
So yeah, how I would have explained it to him. You know what I mean?
I really should have made the distinction between an explicit contract and a implicit contract, because that's really what it comes down to. What it comes down to is, are you agreeing voluntarily to all these terms? If you are, then you must give in when the time comes. So
because we believe in explicit consent. They believe in their social contract isn't explicit consent; it's implied consent. That's not what we support when it comes to HOAs. We don't believe in implied consent. Simply because you buy a land in an area, if you bought the land from another person and all the other people are part of the HOA, but you didn't sign that contract being a part of the HOA before you went into it, you just bought the house from the owners, well, then nobody has the right to force you to pay into an HOA. They would only have the right to get property from you say that you must pay us if you sign that contract beforehand.
right.
Cease.
Right. Okay.
Took me a little bit to get that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
right? There's an X amount
But
of
this is all a
homes
little bit
that are
complicated.
in the HOA.
Yeah. No, I agree. HOAs were a weird thing as he was explaining them to me because I don't know specifically how they work.
Dues to the HOA to maintain the exterior property as well as any other amenities that they give, like a pool or gardeners, tree trimmers.
Yeah.
You're okay with this?
Yes.
Okay. So by that very metric, that would mean you're perfectly okay with a social contract.
Well, you sign a physical contract, don't you?
Yes.
Okay, so that's not a social contract.
Okay.
There you go.
No, it is a social contract.
What
No, it's not. It's not
No,
a
no.
fucking
There
social
you go.
contract.
There you go. There you go. That's where you got him there. You got him there. You got him there.
Yeah.
That's the stupid. He literally just said, oh, well, it's a explicit. You're explicitly agreeing to it. Yeah, but that's an implied contract. Yeah, but that's also implied. Well, no, it's not implied. It's explicit.
Dude,
Yeah,
my
there you go. You
passive
got
side
him.
is so fucking based. This is why I love why I love to have discussions very passively because it's so natural to me. I'm like, no, that's just fucking stupid. No. Like it'll just
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
But
That was good.
that part was
That was
funny.
good.
That was funny.
When you know
Abide
your
by
shit,
various-
when you know your shit, you do very good. But
Yes.
the thing is, you just didn't have the best arguments against it, and now that you have the arguments that are good against them, I think you're going to do very, very well.
Yes. Agreed.
Specific legislation that would mean that you, in theory, would be okay with taxation because it's not really a whole lot different.
Wait, paying fees isn't the same thing as taxation, is it?
That is exactly what that is. You are paying a fee to participate in that society. That's correct. And you also agreed with the fact that there are fees in participating in societies and that if you don't pay that fee, that you are likely to get kicked out, and that's perfectly justifiable because you brought up the mutual aid society.
Right, but these things are different though.
Explain.
I did mess up here, but we'll see that.
Help
so like
me out.
for the
Yeah,
HOAs,
you should
it
have.
sounds like they have a
You
certain
shouldn't have waited for him to say explain. You should have been like, this is no, that is completely different, and this is why. And then you should have just straight went into the explanation. Him being
Yes.
like that kind of made you look a little, yeah.
I think
yeah,
I think
but
the
you're
main
right.
problem
I
here
get it.
was I think the main problem here is I need to understand what the government owns. And the big difference is if an HOA resides over a territory, they've homesteaded that territory and they own that land. But a government, number one, has not homesteaded all the territory in the United States. Number two, has not voluntarily traded all the territory they have gained in the United States. And number three, what territory they have voluntarily gained has been used with tax dollars that are not voluntarily gained.
Yeah, so what you would say is like they purchased it using stolen money.
Yes.
It's an aggression. Yeah.
So
yeah,
I
that's
only
perfect.
figured that
So,
out
yeah.
afterwards, but it's homesteading, involuntary trade, involuntary taxes.
So there's no such. Okay, the thing is, never say voluntary taxes, because that's like saying voluntary rape. You know what I'm saying?
True.
What you would say is a voluntary transaction. What you would say, there's two ways in which you can come to own something: voluntary transaction or through homesteading. Both of which the state did not get its land from doing. The state didn't get its land through voluntary transaction, and if it did, it got it. If it did use its own money, it got that money from stealing from another person. So it used stolen money. So that would not be considered to be a voluntary transaction because there's an unwilling third party who is being, whose money is being used without his consent. Because simply because the state takes something from you, it doesn't then make the state the owner. That person is still the owner. They've just taken it from them. So by them spending it, they've committed another aggression. They've spent money that doesn't belong to them. If that makes sense.
No, that's absolutely true.
Amount of territory that they own, and they've got homes in those territory. And if you basically come up and you're like, hey, I want to be part of this HOA, and then you sign the contract and then you start making your payments, it sounds like you're agreeing to that. But in the situation of the United States, who owns essentially like this giant piece of land, and essentially even the land that they're not occupying, they supposedly own. You can't even live in that part and not be taxed, because if you don't, they'll come get you.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's not different from an HOA because let me ask you this. If you own the home and you're going to pass away, right? Can you pass that off onto your kid?
I would assume so.
Yes.
Why?
Well,
But
if
you would have
they've
to
got
put it in your
contract
will.
laws,
Your
and
kid
then
didn't agree to that HOA.
Fucking crazy, dude.
What are you talking
That
about?
wait, inheritance?
I don't even know.
okay,
I don't
so
even know
the
what he's
wrong-
trying to say here. I don't know what he's trying to say here.
Okay, so what he's trying to say is that you're unconsensually giving somebody else, another person, your house when you die. So therefore, you're violating their consent by giving them the house. The issue with that is giving somebody something
Isn't
or putting
involuntary.
something isn't violating your consent, because in order to violate someone's consent, they would have to own that thing, and then you would have to do something with that thing that they don't want. You giving something to somebody else, right, isn't violating their consent. You haven't done anything to anything that they own without their consent. All you've done is say, I'm passing this thing on to you. If they don't want that thing, they could just not take it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Because consent means you have a choice. So if you are saying this person can inherit my land, you're not forcing an inheritance upon them. They can look at the situation and then either accept it or reject it. They have the choice. You're not taking
and if
away
they
their
reject
choice.
it, yeah. And if they reject it, they'd be like, hey, I don't want this house. Then it would fall back to the commons, and the first individual who homesteads that land would then be the owner.
God, that's a really bad fucking argument. That an inheritance
Yeah,
is
that was
unconsensual.
that's a really fucking stupid argument. It just shows you that they don't really have a good grasp on how consent actually works.
Yeah.
Your kid can't own that. They didn't agree to the HOA.
Then they can say no when it appears. Wait, to the HOA?
Fucking got him.
Spoilers.
Fucking got him, bro.
There you go.
Are you saying that they didn't agree to the inheritance, so they can't have the inheritance, or they didn't sign the HOA contract?
I'm making an argument that you already abide by social contract theory, which means that you're okay with taxation. You just don't realize it yet.
No, dude, taxation's way different. Because
See, dude, he's gaslighting me. He's fucking gaslighting me.
Yeah. But
Oh
the
my
reason why
God.
he can get away with that, right, is because you didn't really give him you didn't give him an explanation as to why he was wrong. You didn't so you didn't use any, like, so for instance, the analogies that I brought up before, you didn't really use any of those analogies. So because of that, he didn't really have an understanding as to why it was any different. And even if you were to explain it and he still didn't understand it, you could at least be like, you would still come out on top, because the audience would then understand it. You know what I'm saying? And he would make for him look stupid for not understanding or purposely not trying to understand it.
Yes.
So yeah.
Actually, it's
so
interesting.
at
It's
the end of the day,
interesting to
you
hear
win.
it's interesting to hear your perspective on this, because I think me and you have like fundamentally different argumentation styles, where yours is you want to show them, you want to lead them to every single mistake they make, and you want to show them the truth, whereas I'm much less charitable, where I'm like, if they're just not smart enough to get it, I just leave it as is, and that could be costly. And I guess that's a problem, but at the same time, right now I'm on the defensive and he's attacking me and his attacks aren't working. And then I think he's basically like gibberishing on about like whatever he's talking about and like trying to gaslight me into believing something. But yeah, I think the audience, it's hard to tell because I'm on the defensive here. So I see it as I'm deflecting the attacks. And then he starts laughing. And it's interesting because when he starts laughing, it seems like he's winning. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's weird, but whatever.
Yeah, that's the thing, because what he's done right there, even though me and you both know why he's wrong, but the audience doesn't know why he's wrong. So when we laugh, when we listen to him and we hear what he's saying that is stupid, me and you both understand why he's wrong. But from an audience perspective, they don't understand anarcho-capitalist ideology. So because of that, they're going to look at him and you, by not answering the thing, and be like, ha, he got him. He was laughing at him because he got him on that, and he didn't really have anything to say to that.
Okay.
So,
I get this.
Yeah.
So I need to look at this in the perspective of the audience more, and I need to understand. I need to picture it as though I don't understand what's going on, and then I have to lead them to the explanation, basically.
Absolutely. Because most people whom you're going to talk to don't know shit about anarcho-capitalism. Most people whom you're going to be talking to don't know the first thing about anarcho-capitalism. Most people's assumption about anarcho-capitalism is get rid of government and just have capitalism. And no, everybody like most people's assumption about like anarchy is that like, oh, get rid of government and then everybody just kills each other and it's a all hell breaks loose or whatever. But
Okay.
that's not how we look at it. What we do, we're not saying just get rid of the government and then have a great old time. What we're saying is get rid of the state and replace the functions of the state with private companies. So we recognize that protection that the protection that the state gives us, the protection itself is necessary. It's the issue we have is the way in which we provide that protection. We don't think it's okay to violate people's consent in order to provide consent to provide services to other individuals. So because of that, we're always going to automatically be against any state system and state to replace it with. It's just going to be hell. But that's, again, we don't believe that. We believe that what should take up that mantle is the private companies who would offer those things as a service. So because people don't know that, most people don't understand that, they're going to be coming at you at an angle of, oh, well, what are we going to do without a government? How are we going to live without a government? What if somebody does this to you? What if somebody does that to you? They're going to be asking you a whole bunch of, or alluding to a bunch of weird things. So what you need to do is you just got to focus on giving them the information that and putting it in a way in which they have no choice but to agree to it. Using their own sense of morality. And that's kind of what I do. That's why I use the rape analogies. Because rape is something that everybody generally disagrees with. So if I use a analogy that points out that you actually do support rape, then you have no choice but to drop your claim. Or if you don't drop your claim, then you're just going to look bad defending something that you don't actually believe in. And that's why Warmish looks so terrible in the debate between me and her. Because I kept saying, you believe that might makes right, so therefore if someone has the right to rape someone, they have the right to. No, I don't believe that. But I do believe in might makes right. With exceptions.
Yeah, that was
but
a
it's just
trash
like, no,
heap, dude.
it's either. Yeah, exactly. So she kept swearing that she believes in might makes right. But when I showed her that she doesn't actually believe might makes right, she kept saying, oh, but with exceptions. It showed the audience that she didn't even know what might makes right even meant. She was just saying that to be against me. And that's the thing about debating. She was just doing that to be against me and make me look, or to just try to get me for something. I don't know what she was really doing. So what you got to do is you got to communicate it in a way that the audience, the people who are watching, can understand, and put them in a situation where they have no choice but to agree with you. And if they don't agree with you, then they're going to look really, really bad. That's the one way. That's, I believe, the surefirest way of getting individuals around to understanding where you're coming from.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
For one.
No, it's actually the same exact thing.
So it's not, because okay, I will give you that they have some
Why is
very
it not?
similar parts. But first of all, taxes taxes tax you on percentages, and HOAs
That's where I fucked up. I
fine
wanna say
you
that.
on fees.
Yep.
So
None
there's
of that
a very
matters.
different amount
That
of
doesn't
production
matter.
there. Wouldn't
Yeah,
you
it doesn't
agree?
matter.
That doesn't matter. What matters again is
Do you agree or disagree?
So
the
you're
aggression.
saying that the
Yes. What matters is voluntary and involuntary. And the land that you own. The land that you own, that's important. The borders.
Implicit and explicit consent. That's the issue. That's what you must focus on. That must be the issue. That's like when me and the other social guest guy were debating. I kept bringing it back to scarce resources and how we settled the disputes over scarce resources. And I kept bringing it back to that because that's really what we're debating on. That's the real fundamental issue. Yeah, continue. Sorry, I keep talking to you.
No, it's cool.
the difference is, and the reason why you would be so flabbergasted, you're okay with the HOA, you're not okay with with the government. You're saying the reason why you're not okay with the government, but you're okay with the HOA is because the government does it in percentages.
Well, for the payment part of it, the HOA doesn't own all the land, right? What, you agree? You think that that's the same thing?
No. No, you don't. They don't own the land. That's not how that works. However, if you stop paying your HOA dues, then yeah, they could potentially, after many times of litigatory attempts to pull money out of you.
Okay.
Yeah, so he just dumbfounded me because I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I didn't understand. We already talked about this, but he just dumbfounded me because I didn't understand what he was saying. Like, how can you, if the HOA is like taking fees from you, how can you fee somebody on their own land? That didn't, it basically like crashed my brain. I was like, what the fuck is he talking about?
But
that's
it's definitely was a debate tactic. He was definitely, like I said, I feel like I said this a bunch of times, but you're having a discussion with him and he's trying to debate you. He's trying to make you look like a fucking idiot. He wants you to look like a fucking idiot so that he could go around and be like, liberalism is right. Just look how stupid these anarcho-capitalists are. Every time I debate them, they never have a good argument. Blah, 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 blah. That's really what he's trying to do. You know what I mean? He's going to take this video and then send it to his friends and be like, look how stupid these ANCAPs are. They can't even figure out whether or not HOAs work. You know, that's it. And honestly, I fell into the same victimhood. I mean, not victimhood, but I fell into the same trap as him when I first debated him. Because I didn't understand HOAs neither. So I was debating him on something that I didn't even have a full understanding of. If I simply had that understanding of how HOAs work and how it would work and this and this and that, I would have completely smoked him in that debate. But I pretty much lost because I didn't have a good understanding of that. You know, and that's basically and I'll admit I also kind of lost the debate with Lego, and the reason why was because I was in the defensive the whole time. And I had the picture, but I wasn't really doing a good job of explaining why why his arguments were incorrect. I didn't have a good understanding of why his arguments were wrong. So because of that, I ended up falling short, you know. And but now that we had this discussion, now that you went through this, I now know what to say next time. Like, you know what I mean? Every time you debate somebody, right, and you realize your mistake, you kind of have to learn. I try my best to learn from that mistake, and the next time someone brings that up to me, I automatically know what to say because I've already sort of been through that, if that makes sense. So now if I ever get into another argument with him, and he brings up this whole HOA argument, or with me or you, we're going to know already what to say. Yeah.
And just to make sure that we're on the same page, the only thing I need to know is that it has to be a voluntary contract. That's it, right?
Yes, it must be a voluntary contract. Nobody. So, for instance, if you buy a house and the owner says, "Hey, I'm giving you this house under the condition that you pay into this HOA," you know, and if you don't pay into this HOA, the title will go either to this group, to the HOA, or me, or whatever. that would be perfectly fine because that's a voluntary transaction. You're explicitly signing it. And he's trying to compare that to a implicit contract, which is the social contract. He's trying to say, oh, but the issue is, and a lot of people say this, is like, I never signed any contract. I'm sure you heard somebody say that before.
Yep.
I never signed any contracts. And the reason why people say that is because they haven't, what they're trying to highlight with that comment is, I didn't explicitly sign a contract that says that I agree to this. You know what I mean? Whereas with the HOA contract, under those circumstances in which I highlighted earlier, you would be explicitly agreeing to this. And that's the difference, fundamentally, between those two.
Okay, that's good. Okay, we're on the same page.
Okay, wait. Okay, so the the HOA doesn't own the land? What are you talking about?
No. You can buy a house in an HOA, and you get equity on the house. You own the house. The HOA doesn't get equity on the house. You do.
Okay. So what power does the HOA have? Forgive me, I'm not experienced in HOAs, but what power does the HOAs have over your house? So they don't own the land.
Oh, it's easy. The monopoly is through the government. You signed a contract. There's a contract that says if you don't pay this, then we can take a lien on your house.
But they don't own the land.
Nope, but they could if you don't pay. Yeah, because you're the one that is also benefiting from the external amenities of the HOA.
So like, I'll say this, theoretically speaking, if an HOA or multiple HOAs had the same amount of land as the US government, okay? And it would be the same case where there wouldn't be enough place to escape. I think that would be a bullet I would have to bite as someone who respects private property. So like if they owned all the land of the United States and you had to agree to one of their contracts or like yeet into the ocean, I guess I would have to be fine with that because private property rights, you have to be consistent with that.
Well, to be fair, you can always move. You can leave the United States, just like you can leave the HOA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems like he's just using the same
there's
arguments.
There's actually a problem with the
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
So, does he make any more different arguments other than that?
I don't remember. I think at the very end, we don't have to do this for much longer. We've been going on for a while, and you're probably busy. But I think we've gotten through most of the important stuff.
Yeah. Only because I gotta head out to lunch. But I had a great conversation with you, and I'm very glad that you actually now have a better understanding of the arguments. And I'm very glad that I prepped you. Because I feel like you're a smart guy. You're on the right track. You know what I mean? And if I'm going to debate with you, I want you to know what the arguments I'm going to be making so that, you're not like left out or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Totally
and also listening to that, it kind of reminded me of when I was debating Lego and other people when I didn't fully understand my own ideology. And it made me want to have a talk with you about it. So